Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. Tonight, we're going to talk about the struggle, and the struggle is very, very real. On July 24th, I will be joining a group of people who will be speaking at the Capitol, in the nation's capital in D.C., to discuss Medicare for All. Now, obviously, H.R. 676 is not my favorite bill. It has a lot of jargon in it that really doesn't jive with me, being the fact that it's talking about paying for things with taxes, which actually, in many ways, not only is it foolhardy, not only is it ridiculous, but it's unnecessary. But the point is that this is where we're at right now, okay? There's not enough of us going out and teaching people economics, not enough people out there really wanting victory to make it so that it's a clean bill where people understand that the nation's government doesn't require our taxes to pay for Medicare for all. This is going to hamper us later on down the road when we try and do student debt relief and we try to get some of the other bills that we'd like to have, like green energy, etc. Until people embrace the fact that we can do all this stuff without raising taxes, we're never going to see the kind of massive change that we need to survive as a species and, quite frankly, to advance beyond this constant cycle of insanity where we do the exact same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So as I go to the Capitol to talk about Medicare for All and how important it is to, in fact, embark on a Medicare for All program, I want to talk to you all to understand what's at stake for getting motivated to speak boldly and without apology regarding economics. Right now, unfortunately, because there's not enough of us out here boldly slugging it out, saying these things, many very important life-saving bills will never even make it into the public space. Many people that say they want things will never see those things because ultimately you can't tax your way to the promised land, because taxes don't fund spending. That's not just a nice little quote. It's a very big important fact. And one of the facts that I want to show you all tonight, I'm going to do a little bit of talking about some of these important factors. And this comes from a guy named Beardsley Rummel, who in 1946 Fed chair, of New York Fed, really stepped out on the block and told everybody taxes for revenue are obsolete. And this is in 1946, even before we got off the gold standard. I'm going to show you an excerpt from that particular speech. Right here, ultimately, you see clearly that not only don't taxes fund spending, but they have some basic purposes for what they do. And none of them are to actually pay for things. None of them are to pay for things. This is so important. I don't understand why this is so difficult for our movement, because my goal, and I would assume your goal, is to not only, be smart about economics, which is really kind of silly if you think about it, without actually using it for something purposeful. It's useless. The reality is that when you understand that taxes do not fund spending, you can actually undertake a massive, sweeping, far-reaching, progressive agenda. And really, the incrementalism we despised in Hillary Clinton, these are the things that we can do as progressives. The Bernie platform wasn't just a bunch of ideas that would be nice to have. The Jill Stein platform wasn't just a bunch of ideas that would be nice to have. No, my friends, all of these programs, all of them, every single one of them, was achievable and is achievable, is absolutely achievable now. And I wonder if we all understand exactly how achievable this stuff is. So I'm going to show you another one by Stephanie Kelton. This is one of my favorite ones. You can't see the whole thing, sadly, because our logo is blocking it. But it says the truth is we're not broke. The U.S. dollar comes from the U.S. government, not from China, as we're led to believe. The U.S. government is not revenue constrained. It is the issuer of the currency, not the user. Dr. Stephanie Kelton, chair of UMKC. You know, and I think to myself, this stuff should make people excited. They should be jumping for joy because there's an answer. You know, you hate incrementalism. We hate incrementalism. That's what pushed us away from the incrementalist neoliberal Democratic Party, that core corrupt Democratic Party. Progressives have been desperate to find a home. They claim they want broad sweeping changes. They claim they want a lot of things. But when you show them this is no joke, and this is where my pain points come in. People will call it magic money theory. Oh, you mean the theory where we create money out of thin air? It's not a theory, it's how it is. And it's very difficult. I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to be honest with you. When I see people say things like that, you guys have seen me fly off the handle. I'm going to try my best, no matter how asinine the comments are, to not indulge that anymore. Because quite frankly, my platform is growing. The things that I'm doing are more important. And the things that real progressives as a whole and the entire team are doing are vastly more important than dealing with people that are too lazy to do the homework and are too unwilling to see progress through. So, I think to myself, one of the most important things ever, is just understanding the basis by which all of these things are coming to be that we're talking about. So Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. Republicans like to talk about the Constitution, right? You got a lot of people that love to talk about the Constitution. Hamiltonian, Jeffersonian, blah, 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 Eonian. But the reality is that Congress has always held the power of the purse strings. Congress created the Federal Reserve. Congress did. We had an article earlier that we posted that showed how going back all the way to before World War II, these end the Fed people were running around saying the same shit back then. And unfortunately, even Mariner Eccles, look him up. Mariner Eccles is one of the true greats of all of this history when it comes to understanding economics, one of the great quotes, if you will, from yesteryear. But he basically broke it down and said, you're going to find that this stock that people worry about in the Federal Reserve that these banks own is nothing like regular stock. It can't be traded. It doesn't connotate ownership. It's really just membership. It's really just putting capital on the line, and it could be ended or augmented at any given time. It's really negligible. But for the people out there who get caught up in very, very small things to block very, very important, real progressive things, this is the kind of stuff that we end up dealing with. So unfortunately, I can't live my life repeating the same thing over and over again. That's the definition of insanity. I'll continue to try and give the same speeches, try to give the same essence of message. That's what Bernie Sanders did throughout his entire primary campaign. He stayed on message, and it got to the point where everybody knew the message. Everybody could repeat the message. It became accessible to all of America. And now people like myself will not let it go. People like myself, I don't care about Bernie. I care about that platform. I don't care about Jill. I care about that platform. And I don't care about the myths and legends that have been told to both block it and enable it. I'm telling you, we've got to focus on how we actually can do this. It's very, very important. It's very vital. So I want to show you something very interesting from Jacobin Magazine. Jacobin Magazine wrote a great article, and it's interesting as you read this. This is just the tweet. The article we posted onto the page just a little bit ago. So if you're checking out the page, you'll see the article with it. Stephanie Kelton also retweeted this. But so many people, and I know you've seen them, I know you've talked to them, I know you've watched all this stuff. People have unfortunately confused the idea of monetary policy with fiscal policy. So monetary policy, for those of you who don't understand this stuff, monetary policy is lending rates. It is setting interest rates, bank lending rates. We're talking about not public purpose. We're not talking about federal spending. We're talking about how you and I get into debt, how banks in turn go ahead and lend money, or I should say bank-denoted IOUs that are in the form of US dollars, okay? When you look at that and you think to yourself, why are people conflating monetary policy with fiscal policy? And I'm just going to tell you straight up, it's because we're ignorant. It's because we are not learned. It's because we don't understand. So quantitative easing, I saw a good question come up. QE is largely what we call a debt swap. It's one of the fiscal tools, I shouldn't say monetary tools, that the Federal Reserve has to create liquidity in the market. So what they'll do is to encourage bank lending or to free up money, if you will. They go ahead and they shift debts around. They do swaps. And by swapping out debt for liquidity, they give a minor spark to the economy. The thing is that in order to have any kind of debt swap, you have to have an account at the Federal Reserve. Most of us do not have an account at the Federal Reserve. It is the wealthy, it is the large corporations, it's foreign governments, on and on and on. But regular people do not have an account at the Federal Reserve, sadly. But I'm showing you this because Jacobin, a socialist magazine, had the chutzpah, had the audacity to poke in the eye the fair-haired people of this movement who, unlike pages, who unlike people that are trying to get the word out because they say something that they don't like. Well, Jacobin took it upon themselves to be very, very truthful and forthright. And they went ahead and wrote an article that talked about the fact that actually Republicans get it, Democrats don't. How sad is that Jacobin, a socialist magazine, is able to stand up and say such an important factor? Now, for those of you who have watched me for any length of time, you should know this about me. I want to bring about a new deal. That's it, man. Full stop. I mean, I've got a lot of other things that I care about. I care about ending the drug war. I care about ending foreign wars. I care about the environment. I care about all sorts of things. All of these issues are directly wrapped up in economics. Even if it doesn't feel like they are, they are. And this is what we're trying to get people to understand here. You know, and some of this stuff is empathy. It's a lack of empathy on one hand, but I'd like to believe that progressives as a whole want to help the common man. They want to help the little person. They want to save people from destitution. I've got to believe that, or I'm in the wrong group of people. And one of the things that I thought to myself is like, you know, this quote right here, fantastic, fan-freaking-tastic. You know, if you're struggling and your people are just sitting there watching you struggle, they aren't your people. And this is what I keep looking at the progressive movement. And I say to myself, is the progressive movement our people? Is it really our people? Because when I see progressives fighting tooth and nail against life-saving economic truths, and I see them literally putting barrier after barrier after barrier in front of progress, I ask myself, are they a progressive? Are they really a nihilist? Are they an anarchist? What exactly are they? Because they're not actually interested in a Green New Deal. They're not actually interested in enabling the Bernie Sanders platform or the Jill Stein platform. They're not interested in any of these things. And ultimately, it is so important for us to realize our goal isn't just to bring about economic truth, although that's definitely part of the root problem. That is the unifying message below our sensibilities, which tell us to take care of the least of these, right? You know, it's humorous that the right wing gets to be able to claim that they are these religious Christians, when in reality, even if people on the left don't subscribe to Christianity, I believe that the vast majority of progressives lead a life that would be more representative of what a Christian value would be than the Christians themselves do, than the right-wing Christian. And I'll tell you why. Those who actually want to bring about a new world where people don't have to suffer needlessly, a world where we're progressing and not regressing, you know, a world where we are able to craft things in our own way to provide a life more abundant, to protect the small, the weak, and to not sit there and destroy the earth. This, to me, the good steward, is a very, very traditional Judeo-Christian fact. Even if you don't like it, even if you want to throw a bunch of stuff about religion in there, I'm making a point, and I hope you're hearing me. The left is more servant-like. They're more willing to help people than I believe the right is. They don't understand, and I could be wrong. This is not a universal truth, because you got the people that will literally fight you tooth and nail. But I think it's very important to realize that our goal as progressives has got to be to help individuals. Now, we put this meme together a little while ago that I'm about to put up here, and this is what I think is super inspiring and important to us. This right here, you know, once you realize that federal taxes don't fund spending, okay, when you realize that federal taxes don't fund spending, you can solve poverty. You can solve hunger. You can actually put in place climate-saving legislation that's not worrying about taxing people, that's actually worried about changing the foundation of the energy policies that we have for this nation. For example, I mean, wind and solar, hydro, you name it. This right here is a beautiful truth, folks. And this is exactly what we as a nation and as a movement, as a movement should be focused on. I really, really, really despise the fact that people don't realize that when you end poverty, when you take away desperation, people tend to do good things. People tend to do awesome things. And when you think about this and you understand that money doesn't come from wealthy people, it comes from the federal government. And when you realize that and you stop financializing the pain, you stop financializing the individual pain of the poor, the people that have been laid off that suddenly have to go deep in debt to survive. When you realize that kids don't have to go deep in debt to get college degrees to get a job. You talk about wanting to worry about the top and the bottom. Well, then you've got to learn economics and not just repeat fairy tales of the past. The reality is that since taxes don't fund spending, you could provide a federal job guarantee. The bedrock of MMT is to eradicate involuntary unemployment. That is not to say everybody has to have a job. That's to say everybody that wants a job will have a job. Okay? And it's not make work. We've talked about this before. We've talked about it before. So ultimately, we have to realize that in order for us to move forward, in order for us to actually win, we've got to eradicate the desperation that causes people to kill one another. We've got to eradicate the conditions that cause us to pollute in heavily minority-laden areas. We call this, environmental racism, right? So much of what we do is directly derived because of income inequality, which is 1,000% preventable. 1,000% preventable. So much of the reason why we've seen so much wealth cluster at the top is because we have stopped allowing our government to spend on the 99%. Instead of spending on the 99%, we have forced everyone into private debt to survive the downturns in the economy. And good for those people that have great credit, that are able to just ride the tide like nothing. But the vast majority of people are living less than paycheck to paycheck. And they can't survive the downturns. They cannot survive the downturns. So this stuff that is in this meme is so important. Universal health care. I'm willing to go well beyond Medicare for all, folks. I think we could do even better than that, but let's take it where we can get it, right? But this student loan debt, think about this, $1.2 trillion of debt. $1.2 trillion worth of debt. Folks, I'm telling you right now, $1.2 trillion worth of debt is an incredible amount of debt that little people that cannot produce their own currency, are strapped with from the day they leave high school and go through life with this massive debt hanging on their back like friggin' Notre Dame, like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. We are talking seriously about a debt that really hurts. Forget the national debt. The national debt is nothing more than a bunch of savings accounts. Countries come in, they buy treasury bonds so that they can park their dollars. They do trade. Since we are a net importer, that means that other countries get our dollars. Since our dollars don't actually spend in their nation, they go ahead and park them at the Fed. And because they're parked at the Fed, they say, well, shit, why don't we go ahead and invest in treasury bonds where we'll at least earn interest on them? That's all this is. We aren't borrowing that money. In fact, where are they going to spend it? Once these nations decide to cash out, they're spending on our country. They're spending in our country, and you will have an economic boom. This is not a matter of us borrowing money to survive. The United States creates its own money. It does not require to borrow money from China. It doesn't require money to borrow from England. It doesn't borrow money from Japan. Okay? So this is very, very important to understand. I don't care if Bernie Sanders says it. I don't care if Jill Stein says it. I don't care if your mom and dad said it. I'm telling you straight up, when they tell you that we're taking out loans from China, when they tell you that we're broke, when they tell you we got a tax to spend, when we talk about having to pay our fair share and all this other stuff, they're lying to you, okay? Taxes, we can go after the wealthy, but let me give you a quick step-by-step on how we should look at things to make sure that we have a progressive revival. First things first, we got to teach each other to understand what we're talking about. In order to have a massive movement, everybody's got to be on board. Not everybody, but a large enough mass to make the kind of pressure, to make the kind of noise required to get the attention of the powers that be, to let them know, if you don't take care of us, the pitchfork and torches, these things, they're coming out. We're coming after you, okay? And when you understand that we have power, that's the first step. The second step is to demand that they spend on us through all these programs, this New Deal America, including a federal job guarantee, okay? The job guarantee is critical so that no matter whether anybody lays you off or not, you're surviving. You have your Medicare for all. You have your free student loans. No student loans. You have free college, okay? Across the board. So I'm going to bring the meme back up. And if you think about this, right? If you understand this, Christy Clayton, Pentagon misplaced 10 trillion, Federal Reserve misplaced 9 trillion, corporations hid 2 trillion. That's 21 trillion. Our debt was stolen. Jesus God. All right. Anyway, I promised I wasn't going to allow trolls to have any time here, so I'm just going to let it pass by. In any event, The United States government is far from broke, okay? And for all the conspiracy nonsense out there that sidelines us from getting universal health care, obviously a lot of people don't care about saving lives. They like their conspiracies, and that's going to be a problem for us, because if that happens, then we die. If they're okay with killing people, and they are murderers by proxy, never forget that. If they're okay with people dying, then we're going to have to work around them. We're going to have to bypass those people, and we're going to have to focus on the people with the ability to have cognition to work towards saving lives. We're going to have to sideline the conspiracy theorists, and we're going to have to focus on the people that are really trying to save lives. It's going to be tough because the conspiracy theorists come out like zombies. You think the Democrat zombies that wanted to vote for Clinton are bad? Wait till you see the zombies that talk about the Federal Reserve and all the other nonsense. There are zombies everywhere. There's very few thinking Americans, and we have to change that. That's our task, is to get past the zombies and to keep pushing forward. Push straight through the zombies, okay? We can't allow the zombies to sidetrack us. They are absolutely lethal to any kind of progress. They're absolutely lethal to it. And you end up losing any shot at Medicare for all. And you know what? Here's the best part. If you believe scientists that say we're near a mass extinction, you know that we got to take environmental concerns seriously yesterday. So while these people are out there trying to track down these mythical keystrokes that they don't understand, we have to be concerned with the inhabitability of our planet, okay? So we got to push the people away that are sidelining the effort. They can join us anytime they want to get out of their own head, but while they're sitting there peddling this nonsense, we've got to push past them, progress, and ignore the noise. And that's all it is nothing but noise. It's pure unadulterated noise. I'm telling you right now, folks, it is the hardest thing to do to ignore the trolls. I'm telling you it is. The Alex Jones effect, the Ron Paul effect on our movement is not to be underestimated. Sadly, these right-wing people have penetrated the progressive movement and allowed them to believe somehow that they are doing progressive things. And it's very, very frightening. It's extremely frightening. So I want to bring about something else here real quickly. Hopefully this is exciting to you as well. This is one of those things that I think is just spectacular. For those of you who don't follow this stuff very closely, take a look at this meme. I'm going to hide this other one here for a second. I'm just going to put this up. The U.S. monetary system since 1971 works like this. If Congress decides to spend, the money gets spent. It doesn't matter what tax revenue is, how big the debt or deficit are, how investors feel, or how much interest gets paid. Federal government checks do not bounce. The money just gets spent. Want to know why? Learn modern monetary theory, or money theory as they call it at Deficit House. Regardless, it is so important. It is so important, okay, that we focus very, very hard on what it is that we want. This is a true statement right here. What you're reading on the screen is a bona fide true statement. There is no dissonance. This is the fact. 1971, Richard Nixon took us off the Bretton Woods Accord. 1971, the convertibility to gold ended forever. 1971, we went to a free-floating, sovereign, non-convertible, free-floating, as I said, for those that don't understand, meaning we're not pegged to gold, fiat currency, that our nation can never go broke on debt denominated in its own currency because, folks, it just keystrokes it. It just keystrokes it. We are not slaves to keystrokes unless we do it with our own minds. Our own minds trap us and make it so that we cannot progress. We cannot see progress because we don't believe we're capable of doing it. It is a belief that holds us back. It's not the facts that hold us back. It's not the truth that holds us back. It's our beliefs that hold us back. More flat earth nonsense that holds us back. We don't believe we're worthy of a life more abundant. We don't believe we are worthy of these things. And if we really want to be worthy of them, we've got to believe it in our heart of hearts. This is the belief section of this broadcast. This is the belief section where I tell you, in order to take radical change, in order to make radical change, we have got to believe that we are worth more than the table scraps we keep getting thrown. Okay? And it's a shame. It is an absolute shame. You know, it is a shame. Listen, I'm not going to get into the JFK thing too much, but let me just say this. For those people that don't understand this stuff, right? MMT doesn't have a position, really, quite frankly, on whether we nationalize the banks or not. It really doesn't matter. The banks are public purpose banks, okay? We need to regulate the banks. We have chosen not to regulate the banks. That is a shame, okay? And that is a bipartisan screw job. Warren Mosler has a very, very succinct, incredibly sharp regulation of the banks proposal. It's in a HuffPost article. I'll be sure to get it out here shortly. But bottom line is that he says, banks, this is all you do. You handle deposits, and that's that. I mean, really, it's really that simple. And all the other nonsense that you see that made banking sexy in The Big Short needs to go away. Okay? People like Bill Mitchell, Dr. Bill Mitchell, who I'll have on the show tomorrow night. Wonderful. One of the original 4 OGs that learned and created modern monetary theory. Randall Wray, Warren Mosler, Stephanie Kelton, etc. He came out and said quite clearly, hey, look, if it makes people feel better, I don't have a problem with the scorekeeper being in the Treasury. There's no reason that the Fed has to be out here. It could be in the Treasury. But here's the problem. It's irrelevant if you actually understand how it works. It's irrelevant. So, unfortunately, let's say we move the Federal Reserve into the Treasury. Now what are you going to hear? Folks, I'm telling you, here's what the next layer of Alex Jones garbage you'll hear. Oh, God, the Rothschilds have finally taken over our government. That's what you'll hear. I'm not joking. That is precisely what you'll hear. You move it into the Treasury, and now all of a sudden, guess what? They're going to say the Rothschilds have taken over America. I mean, a bunch of bozos already say it, but even more will say it then. And this is a real problem, folks. I don't really give 2 shits about the Rothschilds, okay? I really don't. What I care about is that our nation stop acting like it's broke. Start employing people at full steam. Japan has a 250% debt to GDP ratio. I mean, it's unbelievable how much they have. And they have way more productivity, way more employment, way fewer inequality issues in Japan. It is a country that is doing fine because they understand that public deficits are private surpluses. In other words, household surpluses, you and I's surpluses, money in the bank surpluses. The people that say reduce the deficit are saying let's reduce private funds. Let's reduce our ability to save. Let's reduce our ability to survive. I don't think people realize how dumb that is, but that is what we are up against, folks. That literally is what we are up against. So how in the world will you ever receive a Green New Deal? How do you think you will ever receive a Green New Deal? Think about this for a minute. If the left is obsessed with the anti-Semitic Rothschild angle, if the left is just overloaded with the Fed folks who fetishize a scorekeeper, who think the scorekeeper somehow or another is like just running, it's just ridiculous, okay? When you realize this stuff, when you realize how bad off the left is economically, how bad the myths that are in our midst have affected our ability to be successful. When you realize how fervent and nasty the End the Fed people are with their anti-Semitic diatribes and their uninformed, uneducated perspectives and conspiracy logic. Folks, you can clearly see that this agenda right here is not an issue of us being able to do it. It's an issue of us getting out of our own way. We are talking about our own people. We're not talking, forget the GOP. Forget the Republicans. Look at Democrats and look at Greens who believe that we have to tax to pay for things. Think about this, folks. Look at Democrats and Greens who believe that our monetarily sovereign nation that can keystroke everything that we need into existence and make all this stuff happen now. They would rather talk about conspiracies. They would rather worry about soaking the rich instead of forcing Congress to serve us. Now you realize, think about this. Think about the folly of this. This is called being sidelined. This is called taking yourself out of the game. When you focus on going after the rich directly, what happens is that you realize, first of all, that nothing came out of it because the tax money collected was literally deleted. Okay? It didn't get respent. The only way the poor get helped is when the government spends on the poor. Okay? Do you understand this? If you don't understand this, we're in deep, deep trouble. Okay? This is key. Taxes are not redistributed. Taxes are deleted. The only way new money gets out of the government. Think about this as a circle, a cycle, a circuit, if you will. Spending is the birth of a dollar. Taxing is the death of a dollar. So how are you helping the poor that don't have any money, don't have any food, don't have any shelter, don't have any health care? How are you helping the poor by taking away money and deleting it? The only way you help the poor is to spend money on the poor through services, through programs, through a life more abundant, through a federal job guarantee with health care, student free college, and literally making like Election Day a holiday, okay? We are talking seriously right now. Oh, God. Anyway, Douglas Saraton, I love you, man. Appreciate you coming to the show. But let me just tell you for real, we know that rich people have done a lot of things. It's up to us to actually take what we know and fight for this New Deal if we want it. Or we can sit there and we can post up Alex Jones stuff, and then we can focus on that and get nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Zero nowhere. And my kids deserve better than that, and so do yours. Our country deserves better than that. Okay? And the poor cannot wait for us to get through our conspiracies and all the other nonsense. Okay? We've got to look directly at us, ourselves, and make this happen. Okay? This is the deal. This is the deal. If you don't get this, we are lost in the sauce. Now, I'm going to put this up. This is one of my favorite ones here. And this is one that we did a while back. So hopefully you'll see this. Democrats and Republicans, Greens and Socialists all must learn this to be effective, or we will stay stuck. Taxes drive currency. Federal taxes do not fund spending. Repeat. Federal taxes do not fund spending. Money all starts with the federal government. Every last nickel of it. You talk about credit. Your credit ends up going away. It never creates a net financial asset. Credit, once it's paid off, zeroes out. When Congress spends, that money doesn't have to get paid back. That money is adding to the economy. It's expanding the economy. Okay? This right here, my friends, is exactly what we must fight for. We must realize, you know what? Let me tell you something else too, to put a real good dot on it so we understand. Ultimately, this is going to piss you off probably. Social Security is the same exact thing. FICA taxes do not fund Social Security. Every dollar spent is a new dollar. It's no joke. Every dollar spent is a new dollar. All the Social Security in the world. Remember this. FDR, he had a lot going on. He had some pretty big wars going on, okay? So what did he do? We didn't need to go ahead and get everybody to turn in their gold and silver and do all these different things and buy war bonds to fund the war drive. They did that to take money out of circulation because the economy was overheating, because we had met our resource potential. We had full employment. The economy was booming. The war economy was booming. So in order to cool it down, so we didn't have an issue of, we already had scarcity because of the war machine. So in order to slow it down, to prevent a real inflationary situation occurring, they sold war bonds to get people to voluntarily buy these things to take money out of circulation. It wasn't to pay for the war, but he used that as a tool to make you feel patriotic for doing it, so people did it in droves. The same exact logic was used for Social Security. If you believe that you're paying into it, and if you believe there's a little piggy bank off in the corner with crumpled up old dollar bills and hay pennies and, you know, all the other crazy stuff, right? If you believe that, I've got a, piece of swampland to sell you. Bottom line is, it was another ploy to get us to believe that we are paying into something when the government is monetary. So it doesn't require an income. It is the creator of the currency. Please think about this. Put it into your head and think about how important this is. Now I'm going to talk about something even more important. When we do things that are really stupid, okay? We do things that we haven't really thought through. Like, for example, the California Medicare, universal health care, or single payer in California. I want you to think about this with me. All economics requires understanding who the currency issuer is and who the currency user is. California, as awesome of a state as it is, and as booming of an economy as it has, California is a currency user. The United States government is a currency issuer. Now, let's just say hypothetically that California could go ahead and do a Medicare for all kind of deal and survive. Somehow or another, they have enough tax revenues to pay for all the death and all the surgeries and all the different procedures and all the health care required. Maybe they can afford the whole thing. They would be one of the very few states in the entire nation that could. Okay? But if they failed, just like the ACA failed to produce lower cost insurance for most people. In fact, many people saw their care get degraded and access eliminated. I pay more personally in copays now than I ever have in my entire life. Okay? Now, that said, because of that, you have the right wing that's able to point at it and say, see, it failed. Get government out of our health care. So if California were to fail, you can pretty much put a death knell into the single-payer universal health care movement. Because places like Kansas, places like Michigan, places like Pennsylvania with a $600 million annual budget deficit right now, other states that are in the hole big time could never do this on their own. They could never do it. So you would see a complete failure. The federal government has to be the one that does it because it is the currency issuer, meaning that it can unlimitedly, well, up to the point of real resources, spend money. And it can spend it into existence because that's how the government creates money. The banks don't just randomly push money into existence. That's not how it's done. Congress authorizes spending, and every dollar that Congress authorizes is new money. Every last penny it spends is brand new money. Every tax dollar is the death of that money. For those of you who like terms, the velocity of a government spent dollar is 1. It can only be spent once by the government. And then it's dead. Now that dollar may circulate around the economy, going different places. But the government can only spend it once. Because when it comes back to the government, it isn't redistributed. It's deleted. It's very, 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 very important that you understand how this works. Money comes into the government. It is purged from the system. It is the way to keep control of the amount of money in circulation, although they can't really do that. But it is one way to stave off inflation and to drive the need for currency. Now, I've talked to you all about this before. I'll talk to you about it again. Way, way back yonder in the day, governments had to figure out how to get caveman and cave lady off the butt from hunting bear and fishing and, farming potatoes and whatnot. Had to figure a way to get those people to do what the government needed to provision itself. They needed to find a way to get people to build bridges, to build aqueducts, to build whatever, to build White Houses, to build capitals, to build Lincoln Memorials, to build whatever it is that they wanted to build, right? Roads. So what they did was they said, hey, we'll give you a coin. We'll give you this piece of gold. We'll give you this dollar. Back then, person looked at it, was like, why are you giving me this? What good's this going to do? I'm going back over here to go catch me a fish. Government said, you got a point, man. It is worthless to you, isn't it? We'll make it worth something to you. We're going to apply a tax to your lodging, to the place you live. You now have to pay a tax to the king, to the emperor, to whoever for your dwelling place. Oh, well, what do I pay my tax in? That piece of paper, that coin you just tossed away? Oh, shit. Well, I got these other gold coins from this other king. Not any good here, broski. Only dollars or coins or whatever made here. That's what we accept. So now all of a sudden the currency that they produced has value. You have to have it. So now Warren Mosler said it perfectly. Taxes create unemployed people for the government to hire. So people didn't have jobs before this. You understand? They didn't need jobs. So once they imposed this, people needed jobs because they needed money because they had to go ahead and get this to pay their hut tax, to pay whatever tax, right? All right. Now, that's archaic. That's yesteryear, but it's still in play today. You understand this? So what happens? People have to go to work to get U.S. dollars. Doesn't matter if you get Bitcoin. You got to pay your taxes in U.S. dollars. You see that? Does that make sense? That's why when people say, what about Bitcoin? I say, what about it? Can you pay your taxes in Bitcoin? No. There you go. That's why. Because the only thing you can pay your taxes in is U.S. dollars. All right. So reeling it back, Medicare for all, globally. We could do it globally, right? But let's just stay in the United States for now in the territories. The United States government can afford any bill that's thrown at it as long as it's debt denominated in its own currency. Period. Full stop. If somebody buys treasury bonds, guess what they're entitled to? U.S. dollars. Where do U.S. dollars come from? The federal government. Oh, the Federal Reserve? Yes, the Federal Reserve, the creature of Congress. It alone, on the word of Congress, cannot do it alone. On the word of Congress, will go ahead and enter deposits into accounts. And that, my friends, is how it's done. That's it. It's very simple. But we've complicated it. And you watch the people, these people that you know and love, these progressives who are saying, well, we'll need to have a Wall Street speculation tax, and we'll need to have this tax, we'll need to have that tax to pay for it, and we got to have this other tax to do it. You know? And ultimately, guess what? It's bullshit, right? It's bullshit. Now, don't get me wrong. I am all for taxing the wealthy, and I mean tax them through the nose. But let's make sure we understand. First things first, save lives, save planet. If you put the cart before the horse and you allow people to die because you have a fetish for taxing the rich, you're a murderer. Don't even remotely pat yourself on the back. Don't feel good about it. Don't get charged up about it. If you put taxing the rich ahead of saving lives, you're a murderer. That's no joke. Let's just keep it real, yo. Okay? People have got to be able to survive. Let's save lives first. And then, after we have gone ahead and implemented a federal job guarantee, forever eradicating involuntary unemployment, and we implement universal health care, and we implement free college for all, and we implement paid family and medical leave, and we implement expanded Social Security for those people that don't want to go on the federal job guarantee. When you start doing that and you take care of the 99%, guess what's going to happen to the wealth inequality in America? It's going to go like this tremendously. Why is that? Because so much of the wealth at the top came directly from our misery having to be financialized through private credit. You want to know how to end income inequality? You want to know how to sock it to the rich? Take away their basic income, which is our private debt. Or just go ahead and be silly and think that you can tax it away. Go ahead and do that. Okay? It's ludicrous because most wealthy people are not getting a paycheck that actually tax. That's regular people. That's workers. They might be a little bit higher up on the pecking order in terms of their income, but they are nowhere near the wealth that you're looking for. The real wealth that you need to get to, the only way you touch that is to literally stop making the poor have to subsidize their existence. Federal job guarantee, friends. That's how we do it. So I'm hoping that with some of these memes that I put up and some of the talk that we've done tonight, I'm hoping that you guys feel empowered. You feel empowered to do something beyond just the normal, to be super, to be special, to be progressive, and really fight for change. Because I can tell you right now, I'm going to be speaking to the Green Party on Thursday, doing a seminar talking about modern monetary theory, how the future is now, and describing how we can enable a Green New Deal. And I'm going to tell you right now, the idea of tearing the system down or having a Green New Deal are mutually exclusive. They can't be done simultaneously. So you've got to pick and choose. Do you want to be a lifesaver or do you just want to tear down the system? And I can assure you, sadly, there are more of them that want to keep the system intact than there are of us that actually know our ass from our elbow to make it work. It's going to require a tremendous push from progressives to fight for the 99% and actually implement a New Deal America. If we aren't going to do it, it will never happen. It's up to us. This is one of those things where Jill Stein's comment, it's in our hands, she's absolutely right. And let me say another thing that the Green Party said that I really like. Jill used to say, we're going to replace the unemployment offices and replace them with an employment office in every community. That sounds an awful lot like a federal job guarantee to me. And I hope it really is, because we have the expertise and people like Pavlina Cherneva, Fidel Kaboob, Matt Forstater, Stephanie Kelton, L. Randall Ray, and many others. Bill Mitchell, to make this stuff happen. It's very important that we stop allowing people to sideline us, to take us out of the game and focus on these silly, oh, they're a sellout. No, you're a sellout. No, you're a sellout. No, you're a sellout. And start keeping straight laser focus on this economic message. Blow past all the bullshit. Fight like your life depends on it. Do not allow a single person to detract or distract. You stay focused on the goal. You stay focused on the prize. And no matter what anyone says, you keep fighting for a new deal. That is the only way it's going to come to be, my friends. And that's what Real Progressives is here to help happen. Our goal is to kill the noise and go straight for the jugular and get us a new deal. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. I hope you had a good time tonight. I'll talk to you all tomorrow with Bill Mitchell. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.